In the aftermath of Blue's recovery, both he and Enzon are put through an intense physical examination, and Enzon consequently put in a medically induced coma to heal. Why? Neto literally took more damage and is treated as being fine. Regardless, they're going to be out of commission for a while. Neto watching over him, which allows Yaito and her to finally meet, with Yaito trying to intimidate Aneta with her extravagant wealth. Which doesn't work, considering Enzon's the heir to a company worth vastly more than Yaito's, whose clan is the Ayano Koji's long-standing nemesis. A Romeo-Juliet romance their tale is not, and her failed attempts at posturing just makes her look that much worse to the audience. Frankly, Yaito's just more intimidated that the girl 3 years at least her senior actually has a respectable body, the one thing she's not going to get no matter what. However, as Laserman deploys more of his data mining UFOs to steal the populaces of the net cities to power more of his dimensional area generators, Bubbleman comes and beats up Rush, abducting him when he's out on an errand with Roll. Finally, this is the first time we've ever seen him have any interest in Rush, period. Yeah, this was a plot actually forgotten to be addressed since Bubbleman stopped appearing for a long time. But with Shademan back, well, it's assumed Forte told them the whole deal with Rush, despite it not being explicable how Forte would even know about Rush's ability to freely transmit himself into reality. Regardless, Shademan was revived in that previous bit with Forte, but this abduction does go unnoticed amidst the UFO mass abduction of Navis on a worldwide scale occurring, none of the allied Navis able to do enough to them, and mass orders to evacuate cyberspace not doing enough to stem the damage. Mail lets Neto know about Rush's own abduction by forces beyond this, them chasing after via the holes in security Bubbleman left. But too little too late. For as they arrive, they witness Shademan and Bubbleman using a dimensional area core, cross-fusion data, and the battleship creation research matrix at Scilab to convert Rush's data, the only digital being they know of that can freely traverse between both worlds, into a reverse synchro chip, allowing the Navi that utilizes it to freely manifest themselves into the real world without use of a dimensional area. Suffice it to say, when that data is then later copied, pans to be darkened as the threat of the series takes on a whole new tier of world-ending crisis. At the very least, when they were in the dimensional areas, they were contained and restricted to where the fields were set up. Fortunately, Shademan has better plans than getting such petty revenge on them. Regal's a bigger point of ire for him anyways. The vampiric Navi targeting every operation Regal has running on Earth to try and drag the man out. To be fair, it makes the police's job easier, as it's surprising those hadn't been shut down yet as it is, with their owner being the world's most wanted terrorist and their operations making for an easy way to hide them in plain sight. Still, Shademan has no care for casualties at all, so a lot of people are getting hurt. Ultimately though, Regal as Laserman comes out of hiding, merely to taunt him as he's masquerading as a soft light hologram again due to Laserman's light projection abilities, letting him know that he's back in Japan. Huh, so no wonder Zenigata wasn't understood in that one Lupin special where he tries to order a burger. Is it really that common to misspell that with an A? Still, it kind of shows that Shademan isn't that intelligent a villain if he's attacking this wildly and without thought. Yeah, he's mad, but it seems at the end like he never did put that much thought into this world domination scheme. He thinks he's better than humans and their pet Navis, but everything before this that he got was given to him by a human. Regal pointed this out before, but frankly, as the actual big bad of the series, why should Regal care about the damage he's doing? Still, the damage Shademan is doing has to be stopped. Meijin and Yurichiro making plans to trap him within their dimensional areas by placing their generators on trucks to form the field. But to once more show how things got botched in the last episode, the clearly more powerful materialized Navi cannot breach this barrier. He is, however, completely immune to the vaccine chip, because Shademan at no point has been shown ever using dark chips. And the vaccine chip only neutralizes the corruption and dark soul of dark chips, not Darkloids themselves. Still, Neto's there to take the force of the battle off of the adults. Yeah, you've been kinda attacking uninvolved parties. You made this quarrel happen, dude. However, no matter what they try, Shademan just shoves it to the side, actually being relatively gentle on the matter, as all he wants is to just get Regal. The Scilab generators breaking down again as they're overloaded with trying to maintain everything. Before Shademan can deal the finishing blow, however, Regal reveals his masterpiece from beneath Tokyo, having constructed it in secret for a long time. A massive tower that is one gigantic dimensional area converter, which seals the entire world in one massive dimensional area. So, there's this line from .hack.gu, which, amusingly enough, released 2 years after this, that I love to use ironically, but also perfectly describes what Regal just did and what his master plan has been.
Now, the real world is being ruled by the online world! Once we rule the online world with Ida, the real world will be as good as mine! My rule will spread quickly across the real world, eventually allowing me to control people's very hearts! Then, I will be able to create a new world where no one ever fights, and where no one is ever oppressed by another! With the power of epitaphs and Ida, I will create new harmony between reality and online!
And while it is sycophantically megalomaniacal for Sakaki to say the line, here's the thing. With everything Regal's done and been responsible for the last 50 episodes, alongside the breadth of the setting as we see it, Regal actually sells being able to do it. It's actually surprising it took over 100 videos of reviewing the anime to make an overt callback or reference to .hack like this. I've been trying to dial those back. However, the confrontation between Regal and Shademan is a lot shorter than you might think. You sure? Cause we just watched a long montage of you murdering uninvolved civilians as collateral damage in your rampage. But that's not the reason it's a short exchange. No, it's because Regal has perfected his own synchrochips, which will allow him to rule the world as the perfect fusion of man and AI. Even as Rockman and the other still free Navis can hear the cries of all the AI Regal's enslaved to make his perpetual dimensional area field manifest. Subsequently, this fight is a complete curb stomp. Nothing Shademan does doing anything, and for the second time, Shademan is obliterated with no effort. He'll be back. Vampires always find a way. Still, for Regal to do that to a Navi they kept failing to beat... Why the hell has Kenichi Araki not gotten more writing jobs than he has when he can perfectly sell the situations that make lines like that possible? Admittedly, he returned to the Zoids franchise in 2019 with Zoids Wild Zero, and wrote a full third of that series story to rejoin him being one of that franchise's greater architects. But I still haven't even heard of that series before the frickin' pandemic hits. At the very least, though, he is still around and making a positive contribution to media. Using Search Soul, Meijin and Yurichiro scan the tower's network and physical structure, and what they're ultimately dealing with is not good. The entire thing is one massive dimensional generator, and also houses the command core to supplementary generators lining the entire planet. The thing is a fortress, by which he can project his Laserman light clones to freely strike anywhere in the world, thanks to the dimensional area's effects, making all the soft light holograms these normally are into hard light holograms like normally happens to viruses and navies, and alone makes the world bow in submission, and says as such in subsequent worldwide transmissions. For he is clearly the superior being. Yeah, the Observer went mad with belief supremacy and broke from his given task. It's not all that surprising, honestly. And he wanted them to fail that test too. Worse, Regal's got more synchro chips. The normal ones this time. Magic technology? Make my me grow! So yeah, they need a plan and they need it now. Yuricho getting the idea that maybe if they use the holes Bubbleman created throughout the net to bypass their collective firewalls, they might be able to get into the control core at the center of Regal's tower to be able to shut down all the generators. No generators, no giant laser man, no realized laser man, no world destruction and domination scheme. Problem is, doing that is going to take time. Time they don't have with Regal on a direct course to them. Which leaves it up to Neto to do all he can just to buy time. From this, though, we get an answer about one important thing. Why has Neto never tried to slot in the soul forms for use with cross-fusion? And it's pretty simple. Rockman harmonized with the souls of other navies, not Neto. Forcing Neto to harmonize with them as well, despite the power-up it does give him with him utilizing the 5 strongest ones he has, is just too draining on top of everything else to be able to fight for long. Similarly to what happened when Neto first cross-fused. The strain is just too much. So while it would be something cool to see, it just is not happening in the anime. Aside from, Juka style, but we're not there yet. I find it a bit funny, though, that of the 5 he chooses, Fire, Metal, Search, Blues, and Thunder Souls, Roll Soul is not among them. Not just because of its healing ability that would help alleviate the strain, but from the Roll Arrow's ability to literally destroy or disable chips being used by the enemy. Which, had that mechanic been implemented as an ability in the anime, would have probably been too broken in this environment, as it would mean Roll would instantly have the power to destroy and heal the damage of dark chips. And in a situation like this, disabling all the synchro chips Regal's using for his super duper mega maxi powered up form, it's not a plot hole as they never introduced Roll Soul or Roll herself having that ability in the anime. It's just funny to think about how easily a lot of situations in all this would have been resolved much more simply if they had more liberally used the literal first Soul Unison form Rockman got in the series. Because as always, Roll Soul is best soul. As you'd expect though, Neto and Rockman fighting a kaiju with the power of the soul forms, yeah, I don't care what anyone says, this fight is awesome. But every use, no matter how short a time, more and more drains Neto. Every strike weakening him, until he can't even move to defend himself, or anyone else. It's only thanks to the intervention of Raika and Enzan, the latter having managed to get Blues to wake up in his recovery pod, that Neto isn't just crushed underfoot, and takes over distracting Regal so they can recover. Followed up by Raika himself going to help Yuichiro, suggesting they use the same system Searchman uses to breach the barriers of cyberspace to connect to Regal's tower, calling in Neto's friends to assist Searchman's assault on their network and its masses of guard viruses.
Sonic Boom! Flame, Elec, Aqua, Bamboo Sword! Element Sword!
But unfortunately, they're out of time. And as all their friends are fighting for their lives, all Neto and Rockman can do is lay there, listening to the voice of the captured Navis crying out for help, knowing they're all out there fighting for them, and because Neto burned through the soul forms, he was forced in greater harmony with the powers of various Navis, thus opening himself and Rockman up to the powers of even more beyond that as well. And with all those trapped navies being the ones to power the dimensional areas, well, Deus Ex Machina is in play.
僕たちに力をリーガルと戦う力を
お前はロックマン光ネット
レッド君とロックマンのシンクロ率が異常に高い数値を完全なるシンクロそうフルシンクロだ
This is the closest the anime ever gets to showing off Saito style, with full synchro's power doubling taken up to an insane degree, with Neto now able to just pummel Laserman with the power of thousands of navis concentrated, united, into one soul. And it's always great when a show that hasn't used its main theme as an insert theme to use it like this is, at the story's absolute climax.
みんなの力をロックマンだダークショットいけ
バカな
He'll be back. The planet-wide dimensional area collapses, the world returning to a semblance of peace as the meteor storm arrives. Bubbleman coming by and deciding, with all of his companions dead, he's going to reform as he still has Aqua and Iceman, returning Russia's data, which he's recovered for them. However, the largest comet seen in the sky amidst the meteor shower is a far darker tiding of what is ultimately to come. Not that the dub of the series actually showed that to be true, as any further import of the series by that point had been cancelled.
その時地球には新たに竜王の脅威が接近しつつあった
The wrap-up. We have the Godzilla threshold for Dr. Regal's Rampage, which is also the title of the dub version of the second of these two episodes. We have a villain faceplant for both Shademan and Regal being, well, less than great about what their ultimate goal actually is than the process of them getting to achieving it. For all his plans and build-up, once his scheme reached its fruition, Regal kind of just started being a generic destroy-the-world bad guy, when one could think their submission would lead to it being corrupted to his viewpoint. Especially since that's what Battle Network 5 actually has the man's mad scheme end up being. One could argue that his dark synchro chip made him lose some of his own ability to reason, or he was consumed by the drunken feeling of finally achieving the power he needed for his first goal, and to make sure none would oppose him before cementing his own rule and dominance over whoever remains. And by doing so, prove that the world isn't worth saving to Duo, which I think was the point. But as he stops explaining his goals the second he cross-fuses, that's not exactly clear from just Axess. That is gotten into more in stream, but on its own it's not exactly that strong after the absolutely fantastic build-up we've had to reaching this point. Bad filler episodes and Sekijima's nonsense notwithstanding. We have I've Got Soul, for the one use of full synchro the series features, with the anime incarnation of it pretty much being a world soul form. Likewise, we have 11th Hour Superpower, to both Neto using the soul forms in his cross-fused state despite the strain it puts on him, which I really feel should have been established before this, but whatever, and also to full synchro. We have Come Together right now, for all the heroic allies and even a certain villain uniting to end Regal's machinations. Despite the critiques one could have towards Regal's ultimate goal being to turn himself into a kaiju-sized Navi and wreck stuff, this is a satisfactory conclusion to the season and Dark Lloyd arc of the larger Duo saga, which ended up continuing literally the week after this as Rockman's stream starts itself up, and works to answer many of the lingering questions regarding Regal and Yuriko's larger operation that it left in its wake. As Axess was ultimately planned to conclude and transition like this, it isn't a big deal, but man, when the show got cut off on the American side, that was not a fun time to be a fan, with me scrambling to find episodes of Stream Online, as Wolfpack Productions originally worked on them. As I said in the intro video too, they never finished that fan sub, and it took years for that sub to be picked up again. But I did watch a bunch of the unsubbed ones raw nearly 2 decades ago, And that lack of proximity to the last rewatch I did, and the debut of these videos, is rather telling on the distance between them, as it's now past the point of literally the 20th anniversary of this specific season having aired as I released this video. And yet, with 20 years distance, a lot of this season has surprisingly held up quite well. Yeah, there were a lot of bad episodes in it. Every series and season has bad episodes. But my frustration with the majority of them was they were still built on good ideas and things I was interested in seeing happen, but it was solely because of the way they were written, the idiosyncrasies of their specific writers, and how they treated the cast as part of them, that would ultimately decide if they were good or bad. I fixated as much as I did on the Neto's not an idiot in the way you're insisting thing so much in the recap and review of this season, because there are so many signs and evidence throughout everything that he really isn't how they're depicting him. He's just a 12-year-old kid with the weight of the world on his shoulders, with bigger priorities than the schoolwork that's due. To admit to your limitations is to know yourself and to begin betterment of oneself. And he certainly was on that track much of the time, only for it to be derailed again and again for no reason other than to flanderize him and others, just because a given writer didn't want to stay consistent with anything but their own view. That arrogance, when one is working a collaborative work they're not always part of, is generally harmful. Beyond this, as I said, the animation budget definitely took a step up, and Xebec very well knows how to use their budget appropriately. While some episodes are more clearly cut about and jagged, depending on what episode, it actually ends up accenting the mood. The clipped animation of Fear of Summer Vacation is a personal highlight of that, where the skipping of some in-between frames actually helps sell the insanity of it. Compare it to, say, One Punch Man or Fooly Cooly, where some of the most memorable visuals of them make use of negative color or negative space to flip an expected paradigm in its head when things just get plain nuts. That style helps in this case to sell comedy born from sight gags and interplay correctly. Beyond the humor, Axess has its turn as arguably the most dramatic of the seasons with its use of the Dark Ship subplot. Between the Darkloids literally devolving into zombies writhing in their addiction, to the Dark Blues storyline, to the hopelessness the heroes feel sometimes with the villains ultimately getting away with their plots, and even the physical injury that can result from the fights. While subsequent seasons also have their own serious stories, I think what helps sell it here is the immediate tonal shift that overshadows everything and keeps the larger arc of the storyline engaging as you're never quite certain which way it's going, and not just because of the writer rotation. Seriously, I have a very good track record of predicting the progression of how stories go these days, but even on the revisit and remembering certain parts of the longer arc from my watching of it in 2005, and the skipped episodes a bit past that, well, I was amused by how much hadn't been caught on as being important to later, or remembered where individual stories had gone. The show was not that predictable through many of its events, even if the villain plots usually consisted of a main antagonist plot and subterfuge underlying another plan being regularly made use of. And made use of quite well. I think the difference to things now is, writers are always trying to seed a continuous story arc. Thus, the story beats for those are always apparent and blatant. Whereas back in the day, or even as late as the early 2010s, writers remembered that a bit of downtime filler that allows you to develop differing things was just as important to a fulfilling story. Ultimately, at the end of the day, while fans of the Rockman/Mega Man franchise are going to get the most out of this series, and it somewhat requires you hitting the highlights of the predecessor season to catch all the disparate elements, Rockman.exe ultimately is a good season of television at the end of the day, and one I was quite happy to revisit.